Today we are going to look at using Epson scan software to scan negatives. The film that I'll be scanning today is some Ektachrome 160T that was expired in 1996. First time shooting this film, I didn't really know what to expect, didn't know how to process it or what to do, so I had it processed as E6. And I shot it at 100 ISO. So let me show you some of the scans that I got back from the lab. And you can see there's kind of this purple-blue tone to them. And so when I saw these, I'm like, yeah, I like this. This is cool. But I'm also curious how I can actually, scan these differently myself, how I can process them differently, and see is there a way to kind of get back the black in the shadows? Can I get back the skin tones that are there? Or is this just the nature of shooting on this film? But I just want to show you also how I went through an Epson scan and was able to get somewhere closer to what I thought the final image should look like. So let's do that now as we go into Epson scan. So I know a lot of people use the Epson V600 or the 550 or the 700 or the 800 based on the interactions I get on Instagram, and a lot of people find this software frustrating, which I understand. There's also Silverfast, which I use every once in a while, but for this tutorial I'm going to use Epson Scan because I actually have learned how to use it for what I want and how to get the most out of it based on just what I need. And so these are some of the images that I showed you from before. Also, some people ask, how do you do the overscan? I just put it directly on the glass. I know you're not supposed to do that per se. Some people use the wet scan method, but I found 99% of the time I can put it directly on the glass and scan it, and I don't get Newton rings, it's not out of focus, etc. So that's what I'm doing for this demo. I just have the negative directly on the glass, that way I can overscan it and then crop it later how I like. And I also find that having the black strip of the negative is a good way to get your black point and set your black point for what it should be. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to take this photo and start to work on it. So what I'll do is kind of select my area like that, and then we'll zoom in. Now that we're zoomed in, I can be a little more precise with the settings and see what we're working with here. So usually what I do, sometimes what I'll do is I'll start like this and just select the area with the area within the film strip like that, kind of get a sample of the photo, and I'll hit automatic, and a lot of times that gets me a good starting point. Now with this film, it's not giving me a good starting point because of the fact that it's expired, right? And it's doesn't really know what to do with it. So I'm going to undo that and start from scratch. So we're not going to use that because it's not going to get us where we want. So what I'm going to do is go back here, overscan everything, and click my histogram. And from here we can set the black point or the shadow point, and click on this black here, and voila, it gets me very close and has actually done a lot of color correction to get me 90% of where I should be. Now it still seems a little blue, so now I can select the highlight point, which seems to be my shoes here are extremely white, and so I'm just going to click that. The idea is you want to click on the brightest, most white point of the photo, and that'll set your highlight. So there we go. Now you notice it lost some of that blue hue and made it more true to what it should be. Now this is a very monochromatic black and white gray looking photo, so it's hard to tell, but we'll do another one and look at it what it does with that photo. So from here, now I like to hit this show output. This histogram is not giving me an accurate picture of what the final image looks like, but if I hit show output, it'll change the histogram to show me an accurate depiction of what this scan would look like if I were to scan it. And because I want to do better color correction later, I try to save some of those shadows and highlights. Then I can go into Lightroom and do more fine tuning, because I find that you can just dial in the settings more accurately there and more precise. So based on this, I'm going to kind of give it a little more dynamic range by moving this black point a little bit to the left here, and then this highlight point a little bit to the right. And then if we hit show output again, you can see up here the whites aren't really clipping. These whites here are probably this white, and then the blacks down here aren't clipping, so I could probably move the black a little bit more, just because I want to save as much detail in this image as possible so I can fine tune it later. And so another thing what I do when I scan is I keep it at 300 DPI, but I change the scale to 900 or 1000 if it's something that I really want to preserve and keep as a high-res image. If it's something that's just going on Instagram or I don't care as much about, I may make it 400, 500, but this makes it a larger file size with more data. All right, cool. So let's move on to another one. Move out here, and so let's go to this one with this tree, because this is pretty cool. All right, so let me just get rid of this so we can start from scratch here. All right, got rid of that box. Now let's do this again and kind of just start over and see what happens when we do this tree. All right, so select the inside of this image. We'll hit auto exposure, and again, it doesn't really give me what I want. So we'll start over with this, and I'm gonna select this area, and then we'll zoom in so we can have a better image of what we're dealing with. Cool. Now I'm just gonna tighten up this area here, and all right, so let's do this again. Histogram, shadow point. Now this shadow point, let's go with the tree, okay? Because this tree, I kind of want this to be like the black area here. Again, I'll probably tweak this later with the histogram and fine tune it, but this will get us close. Okay, so that made it obviously a little kind of green looking and not exactly where we want to be, but let's see what happens when we click this white point. Now let's go up here with like a cloud or the sky, see what happens. Okay, so it gets us a little closer. You see over here, this seems to be brighter, so it might be a better area to choose. All right, so let's choose that and preserve that highlight detail in the cloud and the sky. And now you see we're a lot closer than what I got back from the lab, which probably they saw this film and knew it was funky and they didn't want to spend a lot of time on it. But again, when I first saw it, I was a little taken aback because I just thought, okay, these are the inherent limitations of the film that I was shooting. But based on this, you can see there's a lot more detail and data there than we got back from the lab. So preserve some of these blacks here. You notice a little streaking on this, which could be just the film. Not sure what that is. But okay, this one is close enough till we can get it in Lightroom, maybe tweak it. It is wintertime, so the grass is fairly dead and it shouldn't be that green, but I would be curious to see what it looks like to play with the saturation, which I would do in Lightroom. But for the time being while we're here, let's just see what it looks like to bump up the saturation. Okay, it's a bit much when you look at the sky, so we don't want it to be that blue. It's probably closer to something like that, but it's a little funky. We have this streaking going on, which I'm not sure what that's from, but close enough and a lot better than what we got from the lab. So this one is a keeper, and I will just make this a little smaller because we don't need all of that extra space there. And we'll scan this one. Cool. So after this, we'll play with some skin tones and see if we can pull out some skin tones better than we got back from the lab. All right, so we're gonna do one that is a portrait of my lovely wife. So I put this one in the film strip holder because it was the bottom image on the strip of the negatives. And so typically when you put those directly down on the glass, they kind of curl up a little bit, and so it might not be as sharp on the edges. So I wanted to just use the film strip holder to hold those edges down and make it as crisp as possible. Okay, let me select my image, zoom in. Okay, so here we go. We're gonna do the same things again. Okay, got the histogram, and now this black part over here will be our black point. I could also use something else. Let's try and use this for now, since this is a different photo, and I assume this is a lot of a shadowy area. There's probably not any detail there. So let's set that as our shadow point. Okay, looks good. And wow, we already see like some of those warm skin tones coming back, which I didn't see in the original photo. So now the highlight point, let me just use her eye. Okay, that was not good, obviously. So let me do this. Just pull some of that back, and cool. We have a lot closer image to what this looks like in real life. and is a lot better than the scan I got back from the lab, even though it has a charming quality to it. But this is just a lot more acceptable of a photo. So I might turn the sharpening down to low on this. I like to do medium usually on my scans, but I can do more sharpening in Lightroom if need be. Anyway, I hope this was helpful. Feel free to let me know if there's something that you know that I could do better, or that makes more sense, or something that I overlooked. And yeah, let me know if there's anything, any comments you have that would help us all do a better job. Appreciate it. Later.